We acknowledge that Tri-Cities Community Television operates on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. We thank the Coquitlam who continue to live on these lands and care for them along with the waters and all that is above and below.
In advance of the upcoming election, the Burke Mountain Naturalists, the Laudato Si Movement, West Coast Environmental Law, the Wondrous Tree Fellowship, Neighbours United, and the Westwood Plateau Community Association all got together to hold an environmentally focused All Candidates meeting, which was held at St. Clair of Assisi Parish Hall in Coquitlam. Tri-Cities Community TV was there and brings you this coverage.
Good afternoon. Now it's working. I'm Adel Gamara, and I've been asked to MC tonight's extraordinary event. By extraordinary, I mean anytime a group of people come together, I think we're in the presence of the extraordinary. Many of you have committed some time today, especially given the beautiful weather that's happening outside, and yet decided you're going to opt to be indoors. To be indoors so that we can hear from each other as a community, to challenge some of the objectives as to why people are running for office, but I hope we don't lose sight of the fact that many people have put their names forward in order for them to serve their community the best way they know how. Before we get started with today's event, I do want to acknowledge my dear friend, former chief of the Coquitlam First Nations, Chief Ed Hall. I'd like to invite him to say a few words to welcome us today. Chief Ed Hall.
Thank you, Adele. Hello, everyone. Ait swail, sapoiol, CMCAS, Coquitlam Ed Hall, Tunasqui, Talitzenlach, Coquitlam-Port. Ossiam to CS, Eaton Alston, Machnitinami, Sep Coquitlam to Coquitlam-Port, shared by many. Good day, how are you all? Ancestral Hunkaminam Endangered Language Dialect introduction of myself here. Coquitlam is my ancestral name. Ed Hall is my English given name. And I've also, in a traditional way, I've welcomed the ancestral and ceded lands of the Coquitlam people, shared by many. So I just want to say thanks to everyone that is making this happen and for giving me the invitation to come up here and say a few words. I want to raise my hands to all of the candidates here from the various parties there for putting their names forward to be able to try and make things better in our day-to-day lives and our climate and environment and everything. I myself am an activist. I'll share that with you. I'm the president of the Wild Salmon Defenders Alliance, which I'm looking to maybe try to get it moved into the Tri-Cities eventually. It's something further down the road. And, I also, I am an activist too when it comes to forests and, deforesting I do not like. And, if there's any city officials, is that Matt I see way over there? Are you accompanied by any others from the Civic? Craig Hodge is there. Craig, good to see you too. And each and every one of you, thanks for making the time of your day to come here and participate. And even during a beautiful day and a Canucks game is on. And thank you, Zoe and Ron and Bonita and Laura and the other individuals that are here. I guess are the moderators. Hi Sepka. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed, for your welcome. And it's so beautiful to hear Halkamenum spoken in our presence. We're raising our hands to you. Once again, I'm Adel Gamara, and it is really a privilege to be with you here today. In this church, I was told by some of the organizers that indeed this is not the church, but it's a community hall. But right next door is St. Clair of Assisi Church, a Catholic church. And like churches, mosques, synagogues, they're physical structures that bring people together. And just like our federal election, the intention is to bring people together. And I don't want to lose sight of why we are gathered here today. Indeed, we have in front of us people who put their names forward to run for public office, to represent each and every one of us in the best way they know how. But as we see, there are people who are actually going out of their way to divide us, trying to find what ways to hedge our differences to ensure that we're unable to have better conversations with each other. I don't have to mention what's going on south of the border and the impact that it's having not only on our economy in terms of tariffs, but also what is going to happen with our environment, which is at the core of the conversation tonight. I do want to acknowledge some elected representatives. Chief Ed Hall had mentioned some of them, but those that have been elected in local council, I do want to acknowledge City Councillor Craig Hodge. Please stand and be recognized. I want to acknowledge City Councillor Matt Gajonlik. Good to see you. Please stand and be recognized. And Robert Mazzarello, please stand and be recognized. He's already standing. In front of you today, we have then the panel of candidates that are vying for your votes. And I'd like to recognize them if they are able to please stand and be recognized. Immediately to my left is Nash Milani, representing the Green Party for Port Moody-Coquitlam. To his left, Michael Glenister, representing the Green Party for Coquitlam-Port Coquitlam. To his left, Laura Dupont, NDP candidate for Coquitlam-Port Coquitlam. To her left is Bonita Zarrillo, NDP candidate for Port Moody-Coquitlam. Oh, we got some love here. Ron McKinnon to her left, Liberal candidate for Coquitlam-Port Coquitlam. To his left is Zoe Royer, Liberal candidate for Port Moody-Coquitlam. I love that. You see the hands, and woo, that shows a lot of love in this place. Let us not lose sight of that during today's debates and conversations. Those that were also invited that are unable to be with us today is Paul Lambert, Conservative candidate for Port Moody-Coquitlam. Iain Black, Conservative candidate for Coquitlam-Port Coquitlam. Malcolm Cook, PPC, Coquitlam-Port Coquitlam candidate. Vladimir Dodovich, PPC, Port Coquitlam candidate. And Ronald Verrier, Marxist-Leninist, Port Moody-Coquitlam candidate as well. They were all invited. They're unable to be with us here today. That said, I've just been asked to do what you've just witnessed. What I'm going to do now is turn it over to our moderator. Our moderator is going to be Harvey Wu. Harvey is currently the president of the Westwood Plateau Community Association. I'll turn it over in his good hands to moderate today's debate. Thanks, everybody.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Harvey Su. I'm honored to be your moderator for today's Tri-City Federal Candidates Environmental Town Hall. As Adele just mentioned, this town hall is brought to you by a coalition of 7 community-based environmental organizations. And we are grateful to them for organizing this opportunity for residents to hear directly from federal candidates on key environmental issues that affect us all. My role as a moderator is to keep our discussion on track, fair, and respectful. And here's how today's format will go. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. And we will have Justin as our timekeeper. So he will raise a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left. And you're going to raise a red card when you have After the opening remark, we will move into 3 pre-selected questions, with each party representative providing a 2 minutes response. And if time allows, each candidate will be offered 1 rebuttal opportunity for 2 minutes. And after that, we will open the floor to audience questions, where each candidate will again have 2 minutes to respond. And finally, we will wrap with closing statements from each candidate. And again, each candidate will have 2 minutes. As moderator, I may step in briefly to keep response focused and ensure everyone has equal time. And thank you all in advance for helping us keeping this event constructive and informative. Now let's begin with opening remarks. So we have we'll go in a randomly selected order, and we have Nash go first.
Hi, yes, my name is Nash Milani. I'm 26. I'm running for the Green Party in Port Moody-Coquitlam, though I am still seeking some signatures. So if you'd like to see me after this, I'd love to get your name on that piece of paper, do your democratic duty, and let's get a full candidate representation on the ballot. We haven't had a Green Party representative for Port Moody since 2019, so, and I will be completely upfront and say that in the past I've been a lifelong NDP voter and supporter, and it was this year, as it became clear that an early election was going to be called, I was checking party websites almost daily. I was checking the NDP website, hoping that they were going to put up an updated platform, and they did not. They still have not. Their platform talks about 2021 and the Erin O'Toole as head of the Conservatives. I don't know who's still talking about Erin O'Toole, but the Green Party had their platform together. They are putting forward bold initiatives to bring this country into the current era. We have to stand on our own aside from our entanglement with the United States. It is becoming an unreliable partner. Some of you may know me because I ran about 2 months ago for the by-election for school board trustee in Coquitlam. So you might have seen my name on the ballot if you were one of the 1.17% of Coquitlam that actually went and voted in that by-election. So I'm hoping that this federal election will have a lot higher turnout than that. And being from Port Moody, we have some beautiful parks, and we need to fight hard to make sure that green space grows in accordance with the rapid population growth that we're seeing in the Lower Mainland. We need a strong federal representative to make sure that these policies are priorities for the next government and not just things that would be nice to have. As the youngest candidate here, I am a stark reminder of how dire the climate crisis is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nash. Next candidate is Laura Dupont.
Hello, everyone. I, too, would like to acknowledge the First Nations land we are on, unceded. I would also like to mention that the name of the Coquitlam First Nations community is named after redfish up the river, an important resource in this community that the First Nations peoples have taken care of since time immemorial. Thank you to organizers, attendees, the Tri-City Community Television, and the community groups who are here who do such good work. We are in challenging times. People in our communities are really struggling right now. There is an existential threat facing us from the US that people are deeply concerned about. When I'm door knocking, sometimes people are in tears telling me about how worried they are about the issues that we face in terms of tariffs and annexation. They are very worried about those things. The climate crisis sometimes seems to be last on the list, but it isn't going away. We know that emissions are climbing and governments are ignoring the problem. When I was on the Metro Climate Committee, we had the Sustainability Teens, a group of young people come to us and tell us that our generation is destroying the mental well-being of their generation because of our lack of action on the climate crisis. I will let you know I feel deeply obligated to this. I could not be more committed to this issue. I was born in Alberta and I learned about rivers there, learned to fall in love with them. I've been defending rivers since I've lived in this community, and I am willing to go to bat to make sure that we have healthy water, a clean air to breathe, and a healthy environment, because life depends on it. Thank you.
Next candidate is Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Glenister. I'm running for the Green Party in Coquitlam-Port Coquitlam. That's this area. My day job is a high school science teacher. I'm also a part-time magician and a part-time Uber driver. But anyway, when I was in high school, my high school history teacher said something that struck with me, which was, she said she didn't want us to be voters that said, my family has always voted conservative, so I'm voting conservative. Or, the leader of the Liberals is somebody I'd have a drink with, so I'll vote for him. Instead, she wanted us to be educated voters. So I vote for whoever I think is the best candidate and party at the time. I voted Conservative when I lived in Ottawa in the 1980s. I almost voted for Trudeau when he promised to have a referendum on proportional representation, but I'm jaded enough not to believe what politicians say during the election cycle, so I wasn't surprised that he dropped that one. What I am concerned with, though, is the environment, and I believe in fairness, both in the way you treat people and voting. So lately I prefer to vote Green. I've been environmentally conscious since I was a kid. I've been involved in beach cleanups, removal of invasive species from parks, and monitoring water quality of streams. I also do it personally. I have solar panels on my house, I drive an electric car, and I also keep bees. Okay? My personal ethics also demand that I vote for who I want to, rather than voting strategically. So when I saw Coquitlam only had 3 candidates in the last election, I was annoyed that my riding didn't have more choices, so I thought, why don't I run? Okay? The Green Party is also the only party that will let me work for you, and if elected, it won't make me vote against my community's best interest. I also suspect the next election may result in a minority government, which would give the Green Party a lot of influence. Thank you.
I'm Bonita Zarrillo, the NDP incumbent for Port Moody-Coquitlam. As we gather on the unceded, traditional and shared territories of the Coast Salish people, we can see how climate change has so rapidly impacted salmon runs right here in our watersheds. As the wildfire smoke turned our skies orange last summer, we all know the devastating effects of these fires, heat domes, atmospheric rivers, and landslides. We just need to think back to the powerlessness we felt watching floods swallow up farms, homes, animals, and highways in Abbotsford. This isn't just climate change, it's a climate emergency. And our families are paying the price as decades of successive Liberal and Conservative governments dragged their feet or denied climate change altogether. The Liberals promised climate leadership, but instead bought a pipeline and gave away almost $20 billion in handouts to big oil CEOs instead of investing in you. And now Trump is threatening to take away our water, the Arctic, and our sovereignty. These facts are serious, and we need serious politicians with the proven strength to stand up for people and the planet. And this is me and my NDP colleagues. Our solutions include retrofitting every home with energy-saving upgrades, slashing energy bills and reducing emissions, all while creating good-paying jobs, investing in transit and green infrastructure, and defending our oceans, waters, and Indigenous rights. The NDP will make polluters pay their fair share and protect our water and air. This is about climate action and climate justice. Justice for Indigenous communities, workers, and all people who are having to pay the price. The time of broken promises by the Liberals and the Conservatives is over. They do not deserve another chance off the backs of our young people. The NDP have never backed down from this fight, and we are here for you. Let's build a greener future together.
So thank you, Adele, thank you, Harvey, and thank Ed for the land acknowledgement. So my name is Ron McKinnon, and I'm honored to have served as your Member of Parliament for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam for nearly a decade, and now as your Liberal candidate. Coquitlam-Port Coquitlam is a vibrant, diverse community. I live here. It's where my wife and I have lived for 30 years. It's where we raised our daughters. This is home. I know you're worried about climate change and protecting the environment. I share these concerns, and so does Mark Carney. The fight against climate change is one of the most significant battles we face today. Yet it's one we must win to build greener, healthier, and a stronger Canada for everyone. Mark Carney has been clear there is no quick fix to this global challenge. It takes smart policies and ambitious investments to find sustainable solutions that work for everyone. Our Liberal government has taken real action here, but we have more work to do. We have an ambitious and responsible plan to tackle the threat of climate change. On April 28th, we need your support to continue this fight, because together we can build Canada strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Now we have Zoe.
Thank you, Ed, for your land acknowledgement, And great thanks to the Coquitlam Nation for stewarding these lands. Thank you, Tri-Cities TV, Harvey, Adele, and all of the organizers. My name is Zoe Royer, and I'm your Liberal candidate for Port Moody-Coquitlam. I served on Port Moody City Council for 11 years until 2022, the Environmental Protection Committee, and 3 years on Metro's Climate Action Committee. I've lived here for 20 years, and I care deeply about the future that we're building for our children, our planet, and our community. We're already feeling the impacts of climate change, floods, wildfire, smoke, extreme heat, and the acidification of our oceans. I've seen firsthand how vulnerable some of our neighborhoods are, but I also know that with the right leadership, we can be part of the solution. That's why I'm running, to take what I've done locally and fight for our community at the federal level, to ensure that we're not left behind when it comes to funding for clean transit, green housing, and climate resilience. Mark Carney will be our next Prime Minister, and the Liberal Party will form government. This matters because our riding deserves an MP at the governing table, where our voices from Coquitlam and Port Moody are part of the conversation in moving forward. Mark's book, Values, is about resilience, sustainability, fairness, responsibility, solidarity, and humility. Read it. Carney was one of the first economic leaders to recognize the true cost of climate change and what we need to do to change course. If you believe in practical, progressive, science-based climate action and want a strong voice in Ottawa, then I'd be honored to earn your support. Thank you very much.
Well done, candidates. The timing is perfect. Just make my life much easier. Please give another round of applause, please. Question 1 is about funding climate change adaptation. Climate change impacts like floods, fires, drought, and heat waves are worsening. In Coquitlam, 2 lives were tragically lost last fall in a devastating landslide. All levels of governments are struggling to pay for the rising costs of climate change adaptation, preparedness, and damage. Meanwhile, global fossil fuel companies, which are making trillions of dollars in profit, have avoided paying anything for the climate damages they have caused. How do you think that communities like Coquitlam should fund the escalating costs of climate change? And do you think that major polluters should have to pay a fair share for their contribution to climate change? So we will have liberal candidates come first, and then NDP followed by Green. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. We all have to face the consequences of the adverse effects of climate change. As mentioned in the question, there was a landslide earlier in the fall, and that happened very, very close to where I live, to my home. It struck me deeply, and its impact, it was shocking and it's shaking. It underscores why we absolutely need to take firm and resilient action against climate change. And as a Liberal government, we have taken considerable effort over the years to do that, and we have the commitment to continue to do so. In particular, we have committed $530 million to a leadership, climate leadership fund for Canada, and we have contributed considerable money to the various cities to help get that moving. In particular, I was able to announce just 3 months ago the delivery of $9.6 million to the city of Port Coquitlam to upgrade the facilities, the pumping stations at Maple Creek and Cedar Creek, to mitigate some of the disaster, some of the problems that we're finding in these events, such as the climate river that we saw before. So we are absolutely adamant that we must continue to take this fight seriously. We have been doing so, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you all. Now we will have NDP candidates.
Well, thank you so much for this very important question. I know we do have municipal councillors in the audience today, so it's a good time to talk about it. We have a serious challenge on our hands, and no one would have thought that someone would be at home in Coquitlam and lose their life to a landslide. This is what we are dealing with, and when it comes, it comes. And we have had over 100 years of conservative and liberal governments successively over and over again that knew this was coming, and they have not invested proactively or post-actively to protect you and Canadians. So I think about FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which I was a part of for a long time when I was in Coquitlam. And they've asked for a new funding model. We need to fund cities differently. They've been asking for a long time, and we are now past the point of needing a new funding model. Now, my Liberal colleague here has mentioned that there's these millions of dollars here and these millions of dollars there. We are talking about $1 billion problem just in city infrastructure, locally here in Metro Vancouver. But let's talk about Indigenous communities, and the NDP has Laurie Idlout in Nunavut and Nikki Ashton in Churchill, Manitoba, where the climate emergency is moving faster than anywhere else in this country, where 12 people sleep in two bedroom houses in shifts, because the federal government, Liberals and Conservatives, have not invested in Indigenous human rights, and they continue to leave communities behind. So as the NDP, we are committed to the new funding model for cities and rural communities. We are committed to not rolling over the rights of Indigenous people, and we need to do it together. Thank you.
Can you repeat the end of the question, please, one more time?
Sure. How do you think that communities like Coquitlam should fund the escalating cost of climate change? And do you think that major polluters should have to pay a fair share for their contribution to climate change?
Should the biggest polluters have to pay their fair share? Yes, 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 yes. And the reason that we are where we are today is in part because of 100 years of consistent Liberal and Conservative grants and fossil fuel subsidies that keep these industries afloat, making trillions of dollars by pilfering our natural resources that belong to us and belong to the Indigenous people that came here and belong to this land before we did. And in part with these 100-year history, if other parties were as serious about the climate emergency as they claim to be, I think they would withhold their king-making abilities in government until those climate initiatives were strengthened. And that's why I have put myself forward as the Green candidate for Port Moody, because I see what's happening. And when I saw that landslide, I had some familiarity with one of the lives lost there, the teacher, because I recently came out of the school system in SD43. So I was quite rattled by that. But we're not going to get anywhere by continuing this cycle of shock and awe and then shrugging it off as we get on to the next thing. We have to address this now, and the best way to do that is with a strong federal representative that will go out of their way to advocate against fossil fuel subsidies. Those have to end now. Billions and billions of dollars handed out by Conservative, Liberal, and NDP-aligned governments to these industries is what has led this crisis to get as bad as it is today. If the free market really worked the way it should, then oil would be a lot cheaper and we wouldn't be giving them free money to exploit our resources. That is appalling. And when people have had issues with things like carbon tax, we give more per dollar of tax from citizens towards subsidies than we even get back as a carbon tax rebate. So we have to end these subsidies now. Thank you.
So the second question is about urban forests and green spaces. It can be challenging for growing communities to maintain and improve access to the benefits of trees and green space. What benefits would a healthy urban forest provide to citizens in your riding? And what steps will you take as a federal representative to ensure that citizens in your riding have equitable access to a healthy urban forest? We have Liberal first, then NDP, followed by Green.
Friends, we live in the most beautiful place in the world. Urban forests are vital to our health and well-being, especially in the face of climate change. And the recent Wondrous Tree Fellowships Forum at Douglas College is a reflection of how important trees are. They reduce heat, improve air quality, support mental health, ensure that there's habitat for birds and wildlife, and absorb carbon. In Port Moody and Coquitlam, protecting and expanding green space isn't just a luxury, it's a climate necessity. When I was on council, I supported policies that protected our tree canopy and expanded public access to green space. I also pushed for more equity in how green space is distributed, because often lower income neighborhoods have fewer trees and more pavement, which leads to dangerous heat islands. Ron mentioned earlier, my colleague in Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, $530 million for local leadership. That's directly to our cities for climate adaptation, but there's more coming. Federally, I will advocate for funding to support local tree planting, nature-based climate solutions, and park infrastructure in underserved areas. Our Liberal government has already committed to planting 2 billion trees across the country and protecting 30% of our land and oceans by 2030. And I'll work to ensure that this benefits our region. Everyone deserves access to clean, green, shaded public spaces no matter where they live. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I think it is important for us to acknowledge that we don't have to decide between housing and trees in our communities. We can have both. And I think one of the most important things we need to do, along with thoughtful land use decisions in our communities, is to seriously make efforts to retain the mature trees that we have. We're losing far too many of them, and they are the major factor in having a solid tree canopy, which makes us a livable and healthy region. Trees do so much for our communities. They beautify our communities. They make our property values increase. They sequester carbon. They cool our communities. They are an excellent food source, and they provide us with biodiversity. It is something that any livable region in the world does an important amount of work to retain. I have a question for the Liberal government folks in the House who had the promise to plant 2 billion trees. I would like to know where we are on that, because I haven't seen much trees be planted, and I think that is definitely somewhere we need to get started on. So thank you.
Okay, so yeah, the Green Party recognizes the immense value of urban forests. As with other candidates have mentioned, they reduce urban heat islands, they absorb flood-causing rainfall, they sequester carbon. There's also air quality. They filter pollutants, enhance mental health. They also support birds, pollinators, native plants, and reduce habitat loss. And around your house, they reduce your energy costs because they provide shade during the summer and, as they say, increase property values. Okay, so what to do? We could do federal funding for urban greening, planting trees in unserviced neighborhoods, mandate trees are planted in parking lots so we have shade during the summer instead of having roasted cars. Protect our existing trees and green spaces by preventing clear cutting for development in favor of selective logging. Also, there's support schoolyard greening programs. Get schools involved planting trees. Fund green corridors to connect fragmented habitats, and support community tree stewardship. Volunteer planting, citizen science programs. Fast-growing suburbs like Coquitlam face a lot of pressure for clearing trees for housing, but it only makes the community worse. So the Green Party would be dedicated federal funding for tree planting protection, stronger policies to halt deforestation in cities, and equitable access so all citizens, regardless of income, benefit from nature. So, thanks.
Question number 3 is about reducing urban carbon pollution. Since most of Canada's emissions stem from our cities, what role should the federal government play in reducing carbon pollution from the 2 biggest urban polluters, housing and transportation? On the housing side, provincial measures like BC's Zero Carbon Step Code and federal initiatives such as the now closed Canada Greener Homes Grant broke new ground. Meanwhile, on transportation, efforts like the federal Zero Emission Transit Fund and the province Zero Emissions Vehicle Act got a real turn. Yet, many remain doubtful that this step alone will be sufficed. What additional federal actions are needed to drive carbon pollution in city down to zero in these 2 key sectors? So we will have Green representative first, and then Liberal, followed by NDP. So you all have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, this question sure tackles a lot of issues facing the country right now, and especially the Lower Mainland. With housing, we need to step up with what we're doing in regards to the use of materials here. One thing that I would personally advocate for is it would be in line with our current Elbows Up movement if we were to focus more so on building co-op and smaller scale mass timber housing. One of the biggest quiet polluters is construction. Cement is imported. We are going to see a sand shortage. Most of the sand used in modern concrete production is stolen from countries like Scotland and sold illegally on the black market and then put into concrete that we use here. So we are destroying coastlines when we are building these large, unlivable and non-affordable towers. So one thing that I am a big advocate for is much more reasonable human scale developments made with Canadian mass timber, supporting Canadian industries, creating Canadian jobs, and that is a first step towards a greener economy that actually grows with people, and it's not just ticking a box for the most people we can cram per square kilometer for some sort of density bonus. We have to take a more holistic approach. We have to look at how every aspect and facet of construction is impacting the environment, as well with transportation and transit. I don't know if I can speak for all the candidates, but I took transit to get here today. I don't know if anyone else did. Let's see a show of hands. Yeah, so what good is a zero emission bus service if there's no funding for it to even run? So we need to get stronger funding for our transit. It will get cars off the road. It's been proven. They are selling us on all these developments right now because they're promising people will take transit in lieu of using a car. But if there's no transit, well, we haven't really done anything, have we? So the Green Party is committed to taking a much stronger stance on both reducing the environmental impacts of construction and making transit and the like more affordable and environmentally conscious. Thank you.
Oh, Lambert.
So it first should be noted that all levels of government have a responsibility and a duty to play in this equation. We all know, however, that increasing public transit uptake will help to reduce congestion and emissions, and we have committed to $15 billion to across the country to improve transit funding across the country, and that includes in the Lower Mainland. We have delivered $1.3 billion to support the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain extension. As an example, Canada's emissions are declining, and for the first time ever, Canada is on track to meet an emissions reduction target in 2026. But buildings play a central role in the lives of Canadians. They're where we work, where we live, where we gather, and where we raise our families. How we build and manage our buildings is critical to the health and vitality of the nation. This is particularly true at this time. As noted, housing, energy affordability, and climate action form the intersection where Canadians' most pressing concerns meet. The Canada Green Buildings Strategy is our plan for greener, more efficient energy approaches to affordable homes and buildings. It is our plan to drive down energy bills, to help Canadians reduce their carbon emissions and workplaces, and make their homes and workplaces of Canadians more protected against the harmful effects of climate change. All of this while creating good paying, sustainable jobs. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Ron. NDP moves faster than the Liberals. So, as I said earlier, like, this is a serious conversation about where we are and our commitment to our young people. And if we think about the legacy of the Liberals and the Conservatives, it's not a good one. So subsidies for oil and gas, billions and billions of dollars of subsidy to oil and gas year over year, the worst emissions record reduction in the G7, and a 30-year deficit on infrastructure and housing, in the hundreds of billions of dollars on infrastructure deficits. Indigenous communities have been hit the hardest. So for tax fairness, if we had had tax fairness, if we had ended these fossil fuel subsidies, which has been long-time NDP policy, we would have had money to invest in community. We would have had money to invest in people. We would have had money to invest in healthcare. But Liberals and Conservatives, and let's not be fooled here, it is the NDP and the Conservatives that are in this race here in Port Moody-Coquitlam and across the Tri-Cities. This is about a legacy of helping billionaires, bankers, and the biggest corporations versus the NDP's vision to help people. And not only is it a vision, we actually did it with the Confidence and Supply Agreement. We brought pharmacare, dental care, $10 a day daycare, anti-scab legislation. Thank you so much. We brought along a sustainable jobs plan that we had filibustered for 16 weeks by the Conservative. My friend Charlie Angus, who's been doing a lot of work on Elbow Up, 16 weeks he had to fight the Conservatives to get a round table to talk about sustainable jobs. So I'm here today to say that the NDP will do it, the Liberals will not, and the Conservatives aren't even here.
All I can say is global warming and climate change are happening. I remember I came to Canada in 1999, and my wife and I, we went up to the Grouse Mountain, and we took pictures. And then we stood on the snow pattern and took pictures. And then we sent the picture back to China. My parents were shocked to see, we have snow in the summer. But now if you go up to Grouse Mountain, no more snow anymore, no more. Anyway. Now let's move to rebuttals. So we now offer each candidate an opportunity for 2 minutes rebuttals if you would like to respond to anything raised so far.
So I'd like to challenge Bonita on some of the things she said there. Last July 1st, I stood on the stage with Bonita and I proudly told the people how we had been a very effective partnership together, how we were able to work together to bring pharmacare forward, to build a dental plan together, to bring school lunch programs for children. And of course, within 2 weeks, they threw us under the bus because they saw the polls and they saw they didn't need us anymore. But we had 150 seats, they had 25. We built the legislation, we negotiated it, we argued it, we negotiated with all the provinces, yet they're the ones who did it all, apparently. So I have a concern about that. I think that credit where credit's due. We were a very good partnership. We were a very effective partnership, but we both had a significant part in making it happen. I'd also like to make a correction to Michael's opening statement. He said that Mr. Trudeau promised a referendum on proportional representation. He never made any such promise. We promised to put together a committee. He promised to put together a committee to recommend an approach, and the committee's result was unusable. I certainly regret that we were unable to do that, and I certainly continue to advocate for electoral reform going forward. Thank you.
Zoe?
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the question posed earlier, which was, what is the current trees that have been planted? And that's a really great question. So just to let you know where we're at. Of course, the Canadian government, which is really the Liberal government, promised $2 billion in tree planting. And they have planted over 157 million trees across the country, with agreements already in place for over 700 million more trees. And we do need to recognize that this is an agreement between the federal government and working with the individual communities to actually plant trees, versus the Canadian government just going and randomly planting. So it's agreements. The other thing that I wanted to share is, while the Liberal government has a lot more work to do, I wanted to share a very quick list of 17 achievements of the Liberal government since 2016, and none of which were supported by the Conservatives. Canada's first ever climate change plan, Clean Growth Program, and other green initiatives were approved because they were and continue to be Liberal Party priorities. One of those, that Climate Change Plan 2016, Clean Growth Program. That's a $2 billion program to support clean tech innovation. That was 2017. Increased funding for renewable energy, and that's ongoing between 2017 and 2020. Greening infrastructure started in 2018. The work isn't done. Plastic waste ban, 2021, something I'm extremely proud of, working with a group of students in our Coquitlam School District from 5 schools. They wanted to come forward to Port Moody City Council. They wanted to see a single-use plastics ban. I worked with them. I don't get any of the credit, but they came to Port Moody Council first. We supported them. They went on to other levels of government. So many things. Thank you. Sorry, out of time. We'll come back. Thanks.
Thank you for clarification on the trees. I'd love to hear some details about that maybe later. I just want to say that our current government, the Liberals, have bought a pipeline, and they talk a lot about climate action and doing important things for the climate, but you can't continue to build fossil fuel infrastructure and think that you're going to reduce emissions and deal with the climate crisis. The NDP commits to stopping fossil fuel subsidies, full stop, and using that funding for retrofitting homes and buildings across this country, starting with low-income people. I think that is a very meaningful way to promote lots of good jobs in our country and bring down our emissions. We have no plan to build pipelines like the other governments do. We know that we have to drive down emissions, and we choose to pick power lines over pipelines. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to be able to let folks know that these statistics that are being said today, they aren't action. They are statistics, and they are checkable. I have an order paper question on the trees, and also on the fact that we do not have a plan for the Burrard Inlet in the case of a catastrophic spill. So these are important conversations. These are important forums for us to talk, but I will just reiterate today that in the Tri-Cities, the question on the ballot, we know what's coming up from the south, is do we want Conservatives or do we want NDP? Because the NDP, as Jack Layton said over and over again, is the differentiation between the two-party divisive system that they have in the United States, and we don't want that here. Thank you.
I want to talk about pipelines and oil spills. So initially, I recommended to the cabinet against the approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline because I myself, as a representative of this community, was concerned about oil spills. The cabinet took that under advisement, and when the plan came forward, we actually doubled the capacity for dealing with oil spills. If you go around the Burrard Inlet, you'll see blue and orange barges sitting around. Those are facilities sited there just precisely for that purpose. You'll see those kind of facilities elsewhere in the country as well, or in the Lower Mainland. But in terms of pipelines, we know that perfection is the enemy of the good. We would like to get to zero emissions today, but we know it's not possible. We have to accept changes. We have to accept, we have to take progress on a more gradual way. We did a deal with Alberta for them to sign on to our climate change program, which meant developing alternative energies, suppressing spurious emissions of methane, and putting a cap on oil sands emissions. The price for that was that they needed a pipeline to Tidewater. And that's why we went ahead with that pipeline. And of course, with that pipeline, we are now in a position against the United States for Alberta to ship its oil somewhere else than the United States. It gives us options, and it's a positive way forward for us as we continue to move towards a net zero future. Thank you.
I'm not sure how much you want us to go back and forth today, but I have to say I was on the inlet recently, and initially we were told that it would be a 7 times increase in the amount of tanker traffic that was in our inlet. It's actually 11 times more. And I think it's just a magnification today of what we just heard from the Liberal candidate about how they're willing to throw the environment under the bus in the face of economics. And I think that we can do 2 things at once. And that is the expectation of the people that I'm talking to on the door. And that is what the NDP has always stood for. We can do 2 things at once. We can protect people and the planet and have a good economy. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later in my closing comment.
Yes. Yeah, I have a rebut to Ron's earlier rebuttal regarding the electoral reform. I was in high school in 2015, and I remember how excited even the students were at the prospect of having the voting system in this country changed. And even though our school's mock election resulted in an NDP victory, you know, young people need to be excited by things that are proposed. Incremental change does not make young people want to vote for you. We saw this in the US. When you have a choice between candidates who are for slow improvements or burning the whole system down, people are mad, people are angry, and they tend to vote to burn the whole system down. And this slow incremental improvements and increases in, you know, or reductions in emissions, they're good, but we need to improve the timeline on these things. The goals are being pushed back, and we do have some of the worst emissions in this country, though that's in part because of wildfires, and we need stronger management of those as well. So yes, actually, electoral reform is a core policy of the Green Party, and it's not something that we're using as a buzzword to get elected. It's something we actually believe in. So that's my rebuttal.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that, the other parties often give lip service to sustainable energy and the green economy, but, you got to look at their actions. Like, I don't know if you remember, but, back in 2022, the Liberals removed the tax deduction for transit passes. And this affected the, lower income families more. And, so I think if you want actual, action on sustainable energy and the green economy, you got to go with the Green Party.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to address the elephant in the room, and it's this. This is not a conservative NDP race. This is very clearly a liberal conservative race. And it's really, really important that progressives know that. And I wanted to say that I have worked with some of these great folks on our prospective councils over the years, and I don't want to take anything away from them. But a political ideology is not a life sentence. Leaders change, time, crises, all of it changes, situations change, and that really, really matters. Tom Mulcair, a former NDP leader, is telling NDPers to vote Liberal this election. Why? Because our sovereignty is at stake. Everything that we believe in as Canadians is at stake. And I see some nods and I see some shaking heads, but it really, really matters. This truly is the most critical election of our lifetime. So I just wanted to clear that up. And it's not me saying Tom Mulcair. It's him saying it on CBC, on CTV, and on the National Post, so some of our trusted, respected news organizations. Thank you.
We'll now open the floor for audience questions. Please keep your questions clear and concise. You may direct the question to a specific candidate or ask it openly. I will indicate how many responses we will take for each question, and we will have allocate 2 minutes per response. So we will have audience who want to ask questions line up here, please.
Hi, I'm Christina Gower, and this will be controversial. So, Canada operates within a capitalist framework where economic growth, resource extraction, and trade policies, such as tariffs, shape its geopolitical role as a resource-rich nation and its relationships in global markets. Would you consider, with the environment in mind, nationalizing our forests or nationalizing our oil and gas industry? And would you consider defunding billionaires? Thank you.
Thank you. It's an interesting question, although I'm not in favor of nationalizing things at all. I think that the business world is very effective at doing things economically and bringing the goods and services we need, and I'm absolutely not in favor of nationalization. In terms of forests, I think that would be a provincial area anyway, but if we want to keep this country together, we need provinces like Alberta to be fully on board as well, and they would be very, very deeply opposed to any kind of nationalization of the oil industry. And there's no need for it. But thank you.
And on the NDP side, I mean, we've met peak greed. We have met peak greed in this capitalist society. It's not working for the majority. It's working for billionaires and the largest corporations. And we know that the choice in this election is between the NDP, who have always stood for people and for people's human rights, and the Conservatives, who are going to trample on Indigenous rights and are going to do the next generation of resource extraction and exploitation for billionaires that don't even live in Canada and will be sending their tax, they will be sheltering their taxes over in Bermuda.
And now the Greens' response. So nationalizing forests, I think, is a really cool idea. I would personally be in favor of a nationalized oil and gas industry to a degree. I had a discussion with a family member who was talking about how we send and sell our crude at a discount to the American market, and who then refines it and sells it back to us. And you know, my family member is a well-off man, and he believes in private industry as being the way forward to correct these things. But private industry does not step up when something is not cost efficient, and that is why we have to do this ridiculous, you know, run around selling it at a discount to America for them to sell it back to us. If we had our own companies and our own refineries here, it would also cut down the need for pipelines, which would be great. And as well, yes, Canada is currently in a capitalist system, but there is another country out there on this planet that does operate under something of a capitalist framework, has massive forests, as well as deriving the majority of their revenue from oil and gas. Anyone? Norway, Sweden, the Nordics. Canada needs to build closer ties with Europe. We have a land border with Denmark now in the north, and we need to start building partnerships with them, learning how they go about, you know, using their resources in a way that actually benefits the people and not private industry, and also ban billionaires. Thank you.
I want to point out a few things. This is a three-way race. In the last election, Port Moody-Coquitlam went 30-30-30, one person won, which means that 60% of your voters were unhappy with it. My question is about proportional representation, and I'd like to correct Ron's memory, because Justin Trudeau stared Peter Mansbridge in the face and said, this will be the last first-past-the-post election. Now, I understand our honourable member from Coquitlam-Port prefers an alternative vote option, but nearly 60% of Canadians prefer a proportional solution. My children, my adult children, take very little interest in politics. I've turned into idealists like myself. I was a voter before I was an idealist. They were idealists before they were voters. My youngest, for the first time in his life, is taking an interest. We've been doing door hangers for proportional representation in our neighborhood, and he's gone in there with me. This is an issue that matters to my kids, and it's time to put an end to 55% did not vote across the nation, and having majority governments from 40% of the turnout, which runs between 40% and 55%, and I'll leave the dismal math to you. What I want is concrete, measurable steps towards proportional representation. It'll have to be a Canadian solution. We aren't Israel or Italy. We're more like Denmark or the Netherlands, but we're way bigger than that, so it'll have to be tailored here. And it takes consultation. I want commitments from, to get my votes, table stakes is what we do with proportional representation. And I don't think the Green Party will say.
So our promise in 2015 was to constitute a Commons Committee to study the matter and to make recommendations on a way forward. We did that. We even gave up our majority on the committee, which we would have had as a majority in the House, in order that the Green Party and the Bloc would have a voice. The committee didn't actually do what it was charged to do. So the promise was that we would put this together, that we would hear the recommendation and come up with a better solution so that this would be the last election under first past the post. The committee, in the end of the day, did not do what they were supposed to do. I myself was distraught to see that we were abandoning it at that point, and I had many discussions with Prime Minister Trudeau over the matter. The problem with proportional representation is I don't think it's an effective solution for Canada. If you have a truly proportional system, you're going to have, there's no way to regionalize it. You're going to have everybody that's elected from Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver. You're not going to have the urban areas represented. It works okay for the Netherlands and places like that, Liechtenstein, because they're small. And to accommodate or to compensate for that, you probably have to regionalize it. So you'd have a proportional representation on a regional basis, which doesn't give you proportional representation for the country. But again, in Vancouver, for example, in BC, for example, there's nothing to stop that all the representatives are elected from Vancouver. So the best way for Canada is to maintain a very regional representation, which we do with one member per riding. The ridings are organized to be the appropriate size, properly approximate same number of people. And I fully agree that we need a better system, the first past the post. That's why I have been advocating for that for many years, and I shall continue to do so. Thank you.
I just want to be clear about the NDP. They fully support electoral reform, in case people are wondering. And I just want to mention about Member of Parliament for Nanaimo, Ladysmith, Lisa Marie Barron, brought forward a private member's bill approximately a year ago, and for electoral reform in Canada, and the Conservatives and the Liberals voted no.
So I am, so many questions, but it's hard to pick one. Your comment about the comment from you, sir, Mr. Brewer, about the $530 million for climate leadership was a very typical, Liberal government comment, which is that idea that yes, this is important, and here are a few pennies, because meanwhile we're spending $30 billion on one pipeline and many more billions on other subsidies. So at what point, my question to Liberals in particular, but also I would like to open it to the others, to each, maybe one person from each party can give a quick reply back. At what point are we going to commit to actually spending more money to stop the problem instead of what is being handed out to make it worse? Are you going to redirect that funding to go to communities so they can build green economies and transition to jobs that are long-term and healthy? My son is an engineer. It's really hard for him right now looking for work, because in BC, almost all the jobs are to do with things like fracking, which is something he really morally opposes. It creates communities that are sacrifice zones, and they're mostly Indigenous communities or other poor, vulnerable people who don't have a choice and have to live in places where they get high cancer rates and have no hope for other better options. We need to fund real communities that have community-based solutions. So you also promised to end those subsidies and end approval for all new oil and gas drilling and pipelines, with a plan to start phasing out the most inefficient and dangerous and high-emission extraction sites. And I really would like to hear a very clear yes or no, and not just a political document. Thank you.
There was a lot of questions there. I'm not quite sure where to start. The pipeline is a means to an end. The pipeline, the Trans Mountain expansion, was a way to get Alberta on board to buy into our overall climate plan. And there may be other opportunities, other needs for that. The difference between $30 billion for completing the pipeline and what we're doing for climate is the difference between capital expenditures and operational expenditures. That's a capital expenditure that's going to be paid back over years. The operational expenditures for climate change, we're looking at probably $15 billion for the transit, and then $530 million for this one particular leadership thing. But we will be doing other things on an ongoing basis to help Canadians move away from a dependency on fossil fuel, so that we don't need to have such a dependence as we do now on fossil fuels.
Thank you, Ron. I know it's difficult to answer this question at the same moment because we have so many questions, so many people standing up here. We want to get as many questions as possible.
I'll be super quick. So the status quo isn't working, obviously, for your young people. It's not working for our communities. We are bearing the price of the climate crisis, and every time we have extreme weather events, it's falling on our communities. We get to pay for it. We're letting the next generation down. We're letting our communities down. We can change that. We can stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry and put that money into retrofitting homes so they're energy efficient and building resilient communities and taking climate action.
Canada has pledged to be net zero by 2050, approximately. Europe has also committed to being net zero by 2050. China has made similar promises, and the rest of the world has at least reached the point of agreeing to be net zero by 2060. So any new market we're building for gas, we expect to stop existing just 25 years from now. And yet, both our federal Liberal government and our provincial NDP government are continuing to push new pipelines, sometimes over Indigenous territory, and new liquid natural gas facilities. When will we stop ramping this industry up when we expect it to cease to exist in 25 years?
Thank you for that question, and just such the crux of this decision right now. And if we're thinking about, I mean, every election we say it's the most consequential and the most important election. But right now, with the threats that are coming from the United States, with the backward policies that we are facing from the Conservatives, this is the time that the voters get to say. This is the time that the voters decide. Not the polls, not the billionaires, not the big corporations, not those donors that are pounding money into the Liberals and the Conservatives right now. It's when you get to say, it's time to stop this, time to stop trampling on your rights, Indigenous rights, and the sovereignty of every nation in this world, and especially those that we are now cutting off U.S. aid. The U.S. is now cutting off aid to countries that are suffering the worst from us exporting oil and gas.
Thank you for the question. Mark Carney, as an economic leader, has been one of the first leaders to stand up and say that our financial institutions need to stop investing in fossil fuels. We know this. Also, he strongly advocates for a global carbon pricing strategy. He will advocate for this. We don't have Mr. Carney's full platform yet. He's actually saving that until after the debate. I'm not sure of all of the levers that he will use, but he is certainly the person to action a very robust plan that will work for all Canadians and will make the big polluters pay. Thank you.
This is a question from City Councillor Amy Lubick, who wasn't able to be with us today. And I know we've spoken about proportional representation, but I think it's important enough that we bring it up again. So her question is, a 2022 study by a professor of economics at the University of Warwick and a senior lecturer in energy policy at the Science Policy Research Unit at the University of Sussex Business School looked at the impact of the far right on climate policy in 31 OECD countries from 2007 to 2018. So their research found that countries with proportional representation voting systems are better protected against the threat of having climate policy reversed by right-wing populists than countries outside the EU with a winner-take-all system such as Canada, the United States, and Australia. So and I'll just ask for maybe a yes or no from each one of you up here in the sake of time. So will your government promise to bring in proportional representation? Or have a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed Hall here. I just want to bring up a couple of names and a couple of thoughts that I want to share with all of you, and I want to acknowledge all of the words that each and every one of you from all the parties have shared with us today in your responses and whatnot. So I want you to think about Greta Thunberg, and also want you to think about Takaya Blaney, an Indigenous lady. These people are, they activism for water and for everything else, big industry. And yes, I've been waiting to see those trees for I don't know how many years now, and I'm trying to find that. And when I was a chief in 2019, 20, 21, 2, and 3, I've wanted to see a lot of change like that. It can be done, and the numbers on investment into housing and stuff like that. Think about maybe triple or fivefold, because things are just going through the roof to the sky. It's just getting really, really expensive. Tariffs are going to drive it even more. It's going to take some really, really creative thinking, and I almost wish that we could have representatives from each of those parties there all the time, collectively making a decision. But I've heard good words from each of you. But I do have where I go to, where I lean to all the time and whatnot. I know what people like to vote for, and I know how the systems work and whatnot. But I want you to think about Thunberg and Blaney, and what can your party do to work towards the activisms that they've represented? Fine young ladies, in this day and age, this last handful of years, maybe they've almost fallen off the radar, but they've actually really stood for some really good movements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, just quickly for the question, and I want to say how important the next generation is. And we should literally be thinking, everyone who goes to the polls and votes should be thinking about how obligated we are to the next generation. It should be top of mind in every election forevermore, because right now we need to give them a hopeful future. Thank you.
Really appreciate the question, Ed. It really is thinking about young people and of course with our Indigenous leaders reminding us that we need to think 7 generations ahead at least. One of the things that really pulled at my heartstrings in reading Mark Carney's book was when he talked about Greta Thunberg. And he talked about her words at the Climate Summit of 2019. And I think that's where many of us, not all of us, some of us may have learned about her earlier, but many of us were really paying attention. Greta, Takaya, they are the leaders of tomorrow, but they are leading today. And they are lighting the hearts and minds of all of us to take action on climate right now. Thank you.
Also a quick green rebuttal. I've been to a Greta and Takaya rally before anyone else in the room, just seeing who the activists are here and who's just talking the talk and supporting. So yes, and it's honestly kind of a sad thing that young people have to be the ones to lead the charge on this, because a lot of people that have spent decades in office have kind of just gotten complacent, and they are okay giving the rubber stamp to things that just make the world worse around them, but as long as they get reelected, they could care less. So young people are the ones at the forefront of this. Greta and Takaya are incredible, and I'm happy to be up here in their spirit and advocating the same causes. Thank you.
Our climate emergency is affecting local communities, and our ability to see that as Canadians is vital. So this is a question about Canadian identity and our ability to report on local events. What are your thoughts about preserving, supporting, and keeping local media alive, which will allow us to monitor local issues, including the environment? What is your stance?
You're faster than the Liberals again on that one. I want to say a big shout out to Geoff right here from Tri-Cities TV, and I know that Geoff because of Liberals' choices around not wanting to fund some of our local media. This is absolutely imperative, folks, with all of the disinformation that's going around. And I know that during this election there will be disinformation. There will be people that are sharing facts that haven't been fact-checked, that they think are facts. At the end of the day, the NDP is committed, absolutely committed, to reinvesting in local media. We know that Peter Julian, our MP, that's actually going to be in Millardville right away, has been talking about how Facebook, Meta, the largest giants, are manipulating our media and not willing to pay for information, including Jeff, who's impacted here. They're not willing to pay the local Tri-City News for their news and their articles. They are not willing to pay. So much they're not willing to pay that they decided they weren't going to put any of that news on social media channels for you. Big billionaires running the show, folks, and we need to stop it.
I think we can all agree that accurate, transparent, and credible reporting is absolutely fundamental to our democracy. The loss of the Tri-City News is having a big impact. I think they're staying open a little bit longer to cover the election. This is a significant blow to our community. I would hope that all of us support local journalism. I can also share this, that Mark Carney has already committed to strengthening their support for the CBC, as opposed to we know the Conservatives, that is one of the things that they will do to stop it. So right now, Pierre Poilievre is traveling without any media. This is the first time that this has happened. To avoid that minute-by-minute reporting, we need to do differently, and I'm committed to that. Thank you.
I'll just add in quickly on this one. I know that Tri-Cities TV also had funding cut as well from a TELUS grant. And as a Canadian who attempted to get into stocks, I had some TELUS stock and I got rid of it when they did that because that's not what I'm supporting them for. They should not be using my money to cut grants to local and very important local news outlets like this. The loss of the Tri-City News, Burnaby Now, and all the rest as part of Glacier Media's profit-seeking cutting is really a shame. And I know the Greens would be strong advocates for increased funding towards small-town journalists, increasing funding to the CBC, which is something that has been a big talking point from the Conservatives, is something they'd like to cut. But having a public broadcaster, something that's that accessible and able to be contributed to by so many Canadians, is an invaluable resource and something that we need to strengthen, not cut. It is not the billion-dollar balloon that they lied that it is. It is a vital resource that Canadians across the country use pretty much on a daily basis. So that's something I would advocate strongly for. Thank you.
My question is for the Liberal Party. So as you know, climate change and climate action is a global issue. It's not a Canadian issue. So you can't be for climate action in Canada and support nations that are pumping emissions and contributing to global warming. So that being said, there's a genocide and ecocide being inflicted on stated by every human rights organization and environmentalist, respectively. The Liberal Party has green-lighted the genocide and ecocide of Palestinians and Palestine and is providing bombs to Israel that are pumping emissions into our environment and contributing to global warming. Why should we take your commitment to climate action seriously when you refuse to impose a two-way arms embargo and sanction Israel, when you keep on supporting large corporations that ruin our environment, and when you put profits over human life and a better environment?
Hear, hear.
Say that none of that is true. I hear you. Canada is not supplying any arms to Israel.
Are you kidding?
Period. They are not supplying any arms to Palestinian combatants either. We stand for a two-party solution in Palestine. We are working strenuously with our international partners to try and bring peace there, to try and bring help to the people who are being harmed, damaged by this violence. We stand for Palestinian people. We stand for a peace in the Middle East, but we recognize the right of Israel to exist. We recognize the right of Palestine to be there, and
Palestine to exist. Palestine to exist.
So, Bonita, you want to add anything?
I just wanted to
Under
say to
international
Sadia,
law.
I see you, Sadia, I know you've been in my office, I know my family has been in your office, I know that your kids are suffering right here in this community, and I just want to say that we have a rule of law in Canada. We are Canadians because we believe in the rule of law. We have a responsibility, Sadia, to you. I know that you have a lawsuit right now against the Canadian government to try to get your family here. I want to recognize the hurt that is in our community. We want you to have your family, Sadia. We want Israeli hostages to be released, Sadia. We want the two-state solution so everyone can have peace. This is the Canadian way. This is Canadian values. And I know that this has been so hard for you and all of our community. I know that many people are struggling with this right now. Law, not war. These are the words of Ben Ferencz, who was one of the lawyers that was at the Nuremberg trials. He was asked to go and see what happened after the Holocaust, and he is the one that said we must have an ICC, we must have an ICJ, and I just ask all of you, please, we must have law, not war.
Thank you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We must have laws, we must obey the law, we must operate through the system of international law.
So I want to speak in part as a human being and personal views, not necessarily all reflected with the Green Party. I have been at pro-Palestinian protests. It was when I was quite young, I was going to catechism because my family was Christian. And it was there I met someone online named Reem Khalil who lives in Nablus. And every time I don't hear from my friend Reem, I get really, really scared. I love that the politicians up here are still living in the fantasy of a two-state solution. The Israeli parliament itself said that it no longer supports a two-state solution. So when I say my personal view, I actually think it's time to start discussion about a three-state solution. Jerusalem needs to be a holy city-state like the Vatican. Israel is taking advantage of the fact that they are not in the ICC, they don't have to listen to these courts. They are getting away with it right now because they are being aided by countries like the United States to genocide the Palestinian people. And I cannot support any... Sorry. I'm very passionate about this. I have Palestinian friends, I know people in Palestine, and we need to cut Israel off, period. Thank you.
First, I'd like to apologize on behalf of the audience to everyone who wanted to ask a question but couldn't because of time constraints. Secondly, my question is for the New Democrats. We hear a lot about how the governments have failed us. Well, here in BC, you are the government. Now, to be more specific, some of the most promising clean energy projects here in BC and across Canada are being stopped and stalled by regulations that were made at first to protect the environment. How will you and your respective government thread that needle and find the balance between those two things?
So we know that as we talk about human rights, that Indigenous peoples of this land have a right to say what energy projects happen and what energy projects don't that go through their land. So right now, we have to be thinking about how the Conservatives and their plan to really run an energy corridor across this whole country without input from Indigenous voices, from Indigenous landowners, from Indigenous landholders. And when we think about BC specifically, I'm not the BC government, but I can tell you that what we've heard today from the federal Liberals, and we know the Conservatives if they were here, is that they are willing to put Indigenous rights and the economy, they're willing to throw it under the bus, and they're willing to throw the environment under the bus to do this work. The NDP federally have always stood and been able to do two things at once. We know we must get off fossil fuels. We know that those projects must not proceed in the way that the Liberals and the Conservatives are threatening them, and that we need to do it in partnership with the Indigenous communities across this country.
We said no such thing. We said that we can create economic prosperity and combat climate change at the same time. As we combat climate change, we will in fact take measures that will improve our sustainable job situation, improve our sustainable companies. In terms of Indigenous rights, they take no backseat to any of that. In fact, our government has substantially raised the bar on recognizing Indigenous rights and resolving land claims. It was never high before, but we certainly raised it. We continue to do so. We will always continue to recognize Indigenous rights, to resolve the land claims as they're able to be dealt with, and to bring peace and prosperity to all of our people.
I have to wonder if somebody was here from the Wet'suwet'en community, that they would say that there has been fair representation for Indigenous communities. I don't think that is the case. Ron, pipelines have been shoved down Indigenous communities' throats since forever, and the Conservatives and the Liberals are no different. They all do it, and that needs to change.
that the Wet'suwet'en has been brought up. The Wet'suwet'en is an interesting situation. They had a land claim dispute that started in the early 80s and was resolved in 1978, called the Delegate decision. I read that whole decision, and one of the significant factors in that was that the court determined that the concept of Aboriginal rights exists, and it defined the parameters around that, how to establish it, and the fact that they belong to groups, not individuals. That is something that was very important because the province was arguing quite the opposite. Unfortunately, with the Delegate decision, the court set aside the trials, set and ordered a new trial. And the land claims dispute that were based on that were never further pursued. At the time of the Northern Gateway project, that was, again, a significant issue. It needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved in the courts. And it may well come back as an issue if the Northern Gateway pipeline if that project is re-energized, if you will. But I certainly support Indigenous rights, and we shall continue always to stand for the rights of all people.
Thank you, Ron. So now we'll hear closing remarks from each candidate. So Ron will first, then followed by Michael, Laura, Zoe, Nash, and Bonita.
Well, thank you all for being here today. It's been a very interesting conversation, very important conversation. I'm hearing all the voices that are speaking here. So we have come through tough times together, and now we have some important decisions ahead of us. And we need to hear from you. That's what this election is all about. I think the choice is clear. It's time to build a stronger Canada that meets the critical moment we are in. When it comes to climate change and protecting our environment, we know conservatives, sideline scientists, we've seen them do it before. They heavily believe that the choice is between fighting climate change and growing the economy. We know that's not true. We can and must do both. With Mark Carney as our new Liberal leader, we have an ambitious plan to fight climate change, a plan that will create jobs and build a stronger economy. This is our moment to decide where our country goes from here. We really can't afford to go backwards. We must keep building, and that's why I ask for your support once again on April 28th. Vote Ron McKinnon so that we can build a stronger Canada for everyone. Thank you very much.
Michael,
Okay. Something to consider. If I could manage to convince all the people that didn't vote in the last election to vote Green, we'd have a majority government. So, even if we don't win, votes for Green are not wasted. Okay, the other parties notice, and they start to borrow our ideas, and we consider that a win. Okay? So, anyway, if you share our ideas, affordable housing, climate action, proportional representation, treating people fairly, vote Green.
Folks, we know the science is clear on the climate crisis. We need to start dealing with it and stop pretending it's not happening. I've committed the last 22 years of my life fighting for the environment and tackling the climate crisis in our community at the local, regional, provincial, and federal level. I take this seriously. If you want the status quo, re-elect the Liberals or elect the Conservatives. If you want some change, you need to elect an NDP person so we have a strong opposition. Join us, become a part of our grassroots campaign to bring positive change to our community. Go to lauradupont.ndp.ca. Let's work together to make climate action happen. Let's bring climate justice to our community, and let's plant some trees.
I wanted to first say that I really appreciate hearing the questions and concerns from members of the community. Sadia, Christina, Tracy, and Ed, and many, many others today. But at the heart of it, every progressive knows and hopes that Mark Carney and the Liberals will form government, not the Conservatives. The NDP are not a choice to form government at this stage. We need to protect our sovereignty, build our economy, and ensure climate resilience. My Liberal candidacy is our best hope to have our community's voice heard in Ottawa, to actually shape the policy and move our country forward, rather than stand in opposition and weaken bold initiatives. With what's happening south of the border, this is a crisis of magnitude that we've not faced before. Let me ask this. If your home is on fire, who do you put your trust in? Do you first call your friend because you like that person? Or do you call the fire department, who are well equipped to actually help put that fire out? Mark Carney is the only leader qualified right now to stand up to Trump. Other candidates, their leaders, may well have us fighting amongst each other. But this is divisiveness at a time when Canada needs unity. And really, the real threat is Donald Trump. This is the most critical election of our time. A vote for a party other than Liberal will put the Conservatives in power and cancel all of the environmental initiatives. But together, we can keep Canada strong. My name is Zoe Royer, and I ask for your vote on April 28th. Thank you.
All right, hello everybody once again. Just reminding you, I'm Nash Milani, the Green Party candidate for Port Moody-Coquitlam. Still in need of some signatures. I hope I'll talk to you after this. Yes, the Liberals and the NDP do take some of their best ideas from the Green Party playbook, so why not just cut out the middle person entirely and vote Green? I love freedom, and I love being Canadian, but we can't be free without environmental sustainability. It makes us dependent on capitalism, and it makes us dependent on neighbors like the United States that are not predictable allies anymore. But since I have a full 2 minutes, I want to take a look at the candidates up here, and particularly the Liberal candidate for my riding, Port Moody-Coquitlam, Zoe Royer. She mentioned that she had been on Port Moody City Council for 3 terms, but I think you omitted some of your electoral history. In 2022, Zoe ran for school board trustee in Port Moody, and at the same time, Zoe also ran for Coquitlam City Council. So she was on 2 different ballots for 2 different cities, for 2 different positions, and I don't think that this moment can be met by a career politician right now. I think this moment needs to be met with someone that is an actual progressive that can meet the challenges being presented by this sudden change in global atmosphere, so to speak. And we can make this riding more progressive, not less. So when you vote on April 28th, please consider voting for a Green Party candidate. In my riding, in my neighboring candidates' riding, we are the voices of change. We can be progressives, we can put Canada first, and we can do it together. We don't need this fear-mongering that if anyone votes for anyone other than the Liberals, that you're guaranteeing a Pierre win. That's just ridiculous, and that sounds a lot like American politics. So maybe the red is closer to that than we might realize. So whether it's green or not, keep the ridings progressive. We can do this together. We don't need it to be the Liberals. Thank you.
What a great event today, and really just a manifestation of what's happening both in Canada and across the globe.
So as Tri-City residents, we value the Burrard Inlet, the trails around Bunsen Lake, and our wild salmon. These are not a resource to be exploited or spoiled. They are our home, a home worth fighting for now and for the future. While the Liberals let you down, and they did, for over 100 years, and the Conservatives want to ramp up the next generation of resource extraction, trampling on Indigenous rights, the NDP will retrofit homes to cut your bills, create good, sustainable jobs in clean energy to bring hope to young people, and hold polluters accountable
accountable with real consequences. While others cower before the billionaires, the bankers, and the big oil lobbyists, the NDP have stood firm. The NDP will eliminate fossil fuel subsidies and invest in our communities. When re-elected, I will defend access to the water, the resources, the wildlife, and the green spaces of the Tri-Cities. Port Moody-Coquitlam already has one of the top progressive members of Parliament in Ottawa, me. And together we can have a community where good jobs don't cost us the earth, where clean air isn't a luxury, and where no one has to choose between bills and tomorrow's future. As families struggle more and more with the rising cost of living, the effects of the Trump's trade war, and worsening climate impacts, the Conservatives and Liberals will let oil and gas companies continue to run the show, getting billions in public handouts while you continue to pay the price for pollution. We just can't let this happen. I will defend you, and so will my NDP colleagues. Vote NDP, vote Bonita Zarrillo.
Thank you all, candidates. Please give them and also another round of applause. Thank you. Together we can make democracy work, and together we can shape our future, the future of our communities. Thank you. I will let
I've been asked to join you today to do three things, two of which I think I accomplished. I don't know to what degree of success, but the first one that I was asked to do is to welcome you all here today on this glorious sunny Saturday. The other of three that I was expected to do is to introduce the candidates and introduce you to them, which I've done. The last remaining request that I've been asked and commissioned to do on behalf of the organizing committee is to thank you. Before I thank the audience here, I do want to acknowledge our candidates once again. The request for you to join us today was sent out to every candidate who put their name on the ballot. Not everybody decided to be here today. Each of you have decided to be here recognizing you're not going to be given easy questions, because this is not a time for us to ask easy questions. You might have some fans here that have already made up their minds before they even walked in the door. I just hope as we made up our minds that our hearts are just a little bit open for more of love for each other. I do want to acknowledge you because you've committed yourselves to be here. I will recognize you in reverse order. Please rise if you may as I recognize you. Zoe Royer, thank you very much for being here. McKinnon, thank you very much for being here. Bonita Zarrillo. Dupont, thank you. Glenister, thank you very much. And Nash, who will keep reminding us he needs a few more signatures. The candidates have committed themselves to each and every one of us, and tonight was not necessarily, or today, was not necessarily easy conversations, and it's not time for us to have easy conversations. I just hope that some of us have learned just a little, reconnected with our communities just a little, faces that we might not have seen each other for some time, we connect. These are invaluable moments that I really don't want to lose sight of it, because the alternative is that we don't show up to events like these. The alternative is that we get more and more siloed and we're not even engaging in any conversations. Yes, there were moments that there was yelling, because hearts are broken. And if the heart is broken, I take that as a relentless optimist, that that's a good sign, because that means that the heart is working. If we are heartbroken, the heart is working. But let us not lose sight that the heart is hurting because there's so much love. We love our community so much that we're willing to be here to share our angst and our disgust, but hopefully also the little hope that we have for each other. I came here on a Saturday because, well, my daughters wanted to play baseball. the community here said, Adele, we'd like you to MC. And I said, will I be of any use? And they said, yeah. Then I have to really disappoint my daughters. I asked my daughters and they said, Baba, you're going to be with our community and go out there. We'll see you a little later today. And I know that each one of us made some sacrifices to be here today. I just don't want to lose hope. I really don't. Our country is better for the very people that have decided to be here today with us, including the candidates who get a lot of beef at the door. They'll tell you good stories at the door, but I know what it's like. You get at the door and people tell you, oh, they will tell you a lot. Hang in there. We love you for what you're doing for our country. We sincerely appreciate you. We might not vote for you, but we certainly love you for being here. Once again, please put your hands together. I want you to look at this gentleman in the blue jacket who's been running around. Geoff Scott, ladies and gentlemen. Geoff Scott is doing jobs with 3 people, and he's only one. This is a symptom of a problem that we need to address, but Geoff, God, we love you. Thank you very much. The last thing I've been asked to do is to acknowledge that there are a lot of sponsors in the back. Please do visit them. There's lots of information, conversations that can continue to be had. I want to acknowledge the Burke Mountain Naturalists that are here. Nature is here. Wondrous Tree Fellowship, what a beautiful name, are here. Laudato Si Circle is here, and Neighbours United. Please pay